All right, let's just jump straight into this explainer. Today, we are going to meticulously break down every single detail of the incredibly heartwarming story, How I Taught My Grandmother to Read. Now, we're not just doing some surface-level summary here. We are going to really analyze the precise micro details, the highly specific timeline, and the underlying structural mechanics that make this narrative so profoundly impactful. Honestly, whether you're studying this text for school or you're just fascinated by awesome stories of human determination, getting into the granular details of this story is going to unlock a whole new level of understanding for you.
So I really love to learn and explain things in a structured way. Here's our agenda. We'll look at the North Karnataka village setting, the magic of the writer Triveni, a grandmother in tears, the Saraswati Puja deadline, respecting the young teacher, and finally analyzing the specific text exercises. Starting right off with Section 1, the North Karnataka village, a setting of delays. We need to examine the specific micro-details of the narrator's childhood setting because, well, the physical and logistical environment is absolutely key to understanding why things happen the way they do.
Now, 62. What's really interesting about this number is that it represents the exact age of our unlikely student, grandmother Kristika. I want you to keep this number, 62, locked in your mind. It contrasts so sharply with our narrator, who is just 12 years old. I mean, we have a 50-year age gap between the student and the teacher here, which entirely flips traditional societal roles right on their head from the very beginning.
And this perfectly illustrates how seemingly small, everyday logistical details, like a terribly delayed transport system, actually created a shared daily ritual for the whole village. Notice the specific delays we're dealing with. The morning paper? It only arrives in the afternoon. And the weekly magazine? That arrives a full day late. Because the transport system was, frankly, pretty bad, the arrival of the bus carrying the post and the papers became this massive daily event. It's this exact delay that forces everyone into a synchronized rhythm of eager anticipation, setting the perfect stage for a serialized story to totally capture everyone's attention. Moving on to Section 2, the magic of Triveni, hooking the reader. Let's see how a popular Kannada writer managed to completely capture this grandmother's heart. Every Wednesday, without fail, that delayed weekly magazine would finally show up, and the 12-year-old granddaughter would sit down and read the next episode of the story aloud to her grandmother. Kristika would literally drop whatever she was doing in the kitchen and listen with absolute razor-sharp focus. You see, she couldn't read a single word herself. She had never gone to school. So she was completely 100% reliant on the voice of her 12-year-old granddaughter to step into this fictional world. So the author they were obsessing over was Triveni. And Triveni was incredibly popular precisely because she had this knack for blending a really easy-to-read style with the complex psychological problems of everyday people. She wasn't writing lofty, inaccessible stuff, you know? Her work was utterly convincing and completely grounded in the lives of ordinary folks. It's exactly this combination that allowed a 62-year-old grandmother who had never stepped foot inside a classroom to feel so deeply and personally connected to the narrative. In fact, Kristika identified so strongly with the novel's protagonist, who was an old lady that also never had the chance to go to the holy city of Kashi, that she would actually memorize the text just from hearing it that one time. Later, she'd go out and passionately debate the episodes with her friends in the village courtyard. This wasn't just passive listening, it was active, ardent community engagement. The story of Kashi Yatre basically mirrored her own life's regrets and desires perfectly. Let's head Section 3, A Grandmother in Tears, the Catalyst. So, the crucial turning point in our narrative arrives when this comfortable routine is suddenly broken.
Let's trace the exact timeline of this catalyst, paying attention to every single detail. The narrator leaves to attend a neighboring village wedding for a full week. During this time, the magazine arrives, as always, but Kristika is completely paralyzed. She's just rubbing her hands over the pages, desperately wishing she could decipher the alphabet, but she can't. When the narrator finally comes back, they're sleeping on the open terrace on a beautiful full moon summer night. The grandmother, who the narrator affectionately calls Ava, comes over. And to the young girl's absolute shock, Ava's face is wet with tears. The narrator had literally never seen her cry before, not even in the absolute toughest situations. This week-long absence really just exposed the crushing weight of the grandmother's dependency.
Which brings us to Section 4, Saraswati Puja deadline, the vow. Let's explore the precise moment the grandmother decides to take control and completely change her destiny.
Just look at the precision of her goal in this quote. She doesn't just casually say she wants to learn someday. She says, from tomorrow onwards. She sets a hard, non-negotiable deadline, Saraswati Puja Day during Dasara, and she explicitly states her core motivation, saying, "I want to be independent." She had felt the deep, burning embarrassment of wanting to ask someone else in the village to read to her, but feeling just too ashamed of her illiteracy to do it. This vow is born directly from that painful, highly specific realization.
Now, how does the 12-year-old react to this incredibly brave declaration? Well, she cruelly, yet innocently, laughs right at the determination on her Ava's face. The kid basically lists out all these physical traits, pointing out her grandmother's age, her gray hair, her wrinkled hands, her spectacles, and all her endless kitchen chores. She assumes that learning has an expiration date, right? Like a strict age limit. But Krishtika just ignores the laughter. She simply states that for a good cause, if you are determined, you can overcome absolutely any obstacle.
And that leads us to Section 5. Respecting the young teacher, a tradition broken. Ava puts in the work, meets her Dasara deadline, and delivers a truly profound lesson in respect.
The day of the deadline finally arrives. The grandmother can now actually read a novel all on her own. And in this stunning, mind-blowing reversal of cultural norms, she bends down and touches the feet of her 12-year-old granddaughter. The young girl is shocked, obviously. Elders do not touch the feet of youngsters. But the grandmother explains it beautifully. By touching the feet of a child, the grandmother shows us that the respect owed to a teacher completely transcends traditional age, gender, and cultural barriers. She isn't bowing to a child, she is bowing to the teacher who gave her the ultimate gift of independence.
Let's wrap up with Section 6, Analyzing Exercises and Vocabulary, the micro details. We're going to dive into the textbook exercises directly associated with this chapter because it really locks in our detailed understanding of the text.
Looking at cause and effect perfectly summarizes the structural mechanics of the plot we just went through. Look at how logically this flows when you break down every single detail. Logistical delays directly cause the eager waiting. Krishtaka's lack of schooling is the direct cause of her inability to read. Her psychological identification with the protagonist is why she was so passionately discussing it. And crucially, it highlights how the narrator's specific absence at a wedding was the direct trigger for the grandmother's tears and her subsequent drive for independence. This structure is quite literally the skeleton of the entire story.
And if we look at the specific vocabulary highlighted in the chapter's exercises, words like protagonist and ardent take on such deep contextual meaning when applied to Krishtaka's journey. She was the ardent listener who found a mirror in the protagonist of Triveni's convincing episodes. Understanding these specific vocabulary matches isn't just about passing some test. It's about deeply grasping the descriptive tools the author used to paint this vivid picture of rural Karnataka and a woman's latent life awakening.
I want to leave you with this final provocative thought straight from the text's critical reflections. What does this 62-year-old's unstoppable desire to learn really tell us about the boundless nature of education? Well, it tells us that the human need for independence, for understanding, and for connection never actually retires. It challenges every single assumption we have about age and ability. So the next time you think you're too old or maybe too set in your ways to learn something completely new, remember Ava rubbing her hands over those unreadable pages and remember the day she finally read them herself. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and remember to always keep questioning the details.